How can we reduce the likelihood of slaughter at Saddleback College? That sounds hyperbolic, but when an unhappy young man brings a gun to school, the result can be slaughter. K-12 schools reported 349 shootings in 2023. K-12 school shootings are daily occurrences in the USA because shootings are daily occurrences in the USA. Colleges and universities, by comparison, are not microcosms of US society, and the statistics are not so frightful. Still, shoot happens. In this graph, attack on others usually means the shooter is targeting a specific individual due to a specific grievance. It's a personal dispute. The thought of such individualized attacks isn't that scary for faculty members, I presume, because we're pleasant, decent people, I presume, and that would never happen to us, we presume. In short, it's not our problem. The exception is when faculty members are targeted by a disgruntled colleague or student. These are rare events and typically occur at research universities where power dynamics can create intense resentment, such as in these three examples. Mass shootings are different, typically defined as 3 or more victims. There is a tendency to call mass shootings random, implying the attacker didn't have a specific target. He shot at whomever he encountered, and that could be anyone, even you. In 2013, a 23-year-old man set his family home on fire, then drove to nearby Santa Monica College and fired 70 rounds. All told, he killed 5 and injured 4 before police killed him. He had previously attended the college. In 2014, in Isla Vista, the student ghetto next to UC Santa Barbara, a 22-year-old man killed 6 and injured 14. Then he killed himself. In his manifesto, he complained about being an incel, which means involuntarily celibate and implies hostility toward women. Before deciding on Isla Vista, this incel had considered slaughtering people at Santa Barbara City College, where he sometimes took classes, a close call for a community college. In 2015, at Umpqua Community College in Oregon, a 26-year-old man fatally shot his English teacher and 8 classmates and injured 8 more. After police shot him, he shot himself. His parting note said he had no friends, no job, no girlfriend, and expressed admiration for the Santa Barbara incel killer. This, then, is my starting point. Saddleback College, like any community college, could experience slaughter with randomly chosen victims. Unlikely, but still, in my opinion, cause for concern. So, what can be done? The school district promises a safe work environment free of violence. That sounds good. But what follows is legalistic language, beginning with a list of definitions. The top priority is effectively handling incidents. This will be done by reporting and investigating those incidents. The Human Resources Department has a workplace violence prevention plan. The title promises prevention, but after the legalistic definitions, the emphasis is on procedures for reporting and recording incidents. The general approach is this: if, while at work, you experience violence, report it using proper procedures. Human Resources will then take corrective action to prevent similar incidents from occurring. This has its place, but it does not address slaughter. The police do. If you were to visit the campus police website for guidance, which seems unlikely, you would be encouraged to prepare now. The police suggest that you look around today for exits and places to hide. And if, one terrible day, you do hear gunfire, run away. If it's too late to run, then hide, play dead, or fight back. The police website contains an instructional video with the same advice. But these are instinctive reactions, fight or flight or freeze. I mean, faced with an indiscriminate shooter, what else are you going to do? You're going to call the campus police, that's what, and provide 5 pieces of information. The police will then, quote, directly intervene with the actions of the shooter to mitigate the situation. Leaving aside the nice euphemisms, the police will probably kill the shooter if he doesn't kill himself first. To summarize so far, the risk of slaughter at Saddleback College is small but real, and the official prescription is for mitigation, which means trying, once the slaughter has begun, to minimize the number of victims. Maybe faculty members can do better. But first, some key findings regarding campus mass shootings from both K-12 and higher ed databases. Most campus shootings occur in diverse inner cities, usually the result of personal disputes. But a campus mass shooting is more likely to occur in a predominantly white community, either suburban or rural. Very rarely is the campus mass shooter a female. Rather, it's a male aged 12 to 26 who is socially isolated, has a history of being bullied, feels rejected and hopeless, suffers from anxiety and depression, experiences suicidal impulses, and of course, has access to a gun. In roughly half the incidents, the shooter was identified in advance as troubled and potentially dangerous. The clues came from his social media posts, his antisocial behavior, including verbal threats, and from mental health evaluations. As you've probably noticed, there's a mental health crisis among college students, with shockingly high rates of loneliness, anxiety, and depression. Though I don't know what there is to be so anxious about. Compared to previous generations, it seems, social media has replaced more organic human connection. Students stare at their phones rather than engage in the world around them. This is likely a major factor in why college students today seem less equipped to cope with life's difficulties, even as social and economic pressures have increased. With all of this in mind, the frequently recommended policy solutions are more and better resources for identifying, protecting, and caring for at-risk youth, less screen time, and fewer guns. These prescriptions are obvious. They are also politically problematic because in the United States of ammunition, social media is big business, gun ownership is sacred, and mental health care is often a third-rate budget item. Way back in 2002, filmmaker Michael Moore identified the connection between a stressed out, heavily armed society and campus slaughter. Since then, things have only gotten worse. The solution, of course, is a mass sustained nonviolent movement, akin to the civil rights movement, to rehabilitate and transform our violent society. A movement which will be led by young people, but that's not my topic here. A college slaughter is an elaborate suicide. The shooter has no escape plan. He's distraught, but not totally detached from reality. He knows how it will end, either self-inflicted fatal wound, or suicide by cop. He takes others down with him because in this final action, his subconscious hopes to find emotional satisfaction. Normally he avoids eye contact, but today he looks straight into his victims' faces. He feels powerful. He is punishing every adult who ignored or abused him, every boy who bullied him, every girl who dismissed him. He's resolving grievances, exacting revenge. And today he's important. He can no longer be ignored. He will not soon be forgotten. Going out in a blaze of glory is better than enduring misery. But he's a copycat. He didn't invent the genre. He's seen it on the news or in the movies or in video games. The heroic, homicidal, macho dude, serving up justice, not afraid to die, going out in a blaze of glory with his manhood affirmed. Here's a critical point, obvious but often overlooked. The college mass shooter does have a specific target in mind, the school, the campus community. He didn't show up there by accident. Usually, but not always, he's a student or former student. He has an emotional connection to the targeted college, and it's not a positive one. I'm speculating somewhat, but for the mass shooter, the college is, at best, a place of disappointment and rejection, where other students appear to be thriving, yet he, unfairly it seems, hasn't received the affirmation and care that he desperately needs. The college is probably a place of social failure, where he has felt shame or humiliation, or, worse yet, a place of outright hostility, where he has felt condemnation and fear. Perhaps, due to experiences in K-12, he has a negative attitude toward campus communities in general, and his college experience hasn't been positive enough to change his mind. Either way, if it's suicidal slaughter he wants, the familiar yet disappointing college is as suitable a place as any. It might be the first target that comes to mind. There was a student in my classroom who sat as far as possible from other students. He looked awkward and uncomfortable. He never said a word, never completed any assignments, was often absent. Consequently, he had no chance of receiving course credit, yet sometimes he did show up, which suggests he was hoping for something, probably human connection. But at the time I didn't understand and I didn't know what to say to him, so I didn't say anything. Anyhow, I was busy. I had lots of other struggling students who were at least doing the work. Plus, I had my own personal issues, and come on, I'm a teacher, not a counselor. That was over 15 years ago, and I still regret it. That student needed help, and I didn't even try. There is a saying, typically cited as an African proverb: the child not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. This suggests a way to protect our village. Perhaps we can decrease the likelihood of campus slaughter by cultivating a compassionate campus community. Empathy is the ability to understand and share what someone else might be feeling. The empathetic affirmation is, I know what it feels like. Compassion includes the recognition of suffering, a benevolent emotional response to that suffering, and a desire to alleviate that suffering. The compassionate affirmation is, I recognize your suffering. What can I do to help you? Compassion is empathy plus action. So, a compassionate campus is not just polite, respectful, friendly, fair, and so forth, not just a benign, safe place, but a community consciously committed to the alleviation of suffering. This includes encouraging empathy, teaching compassionate action, and taking action, with everyone invited. That way, If an unhappy man or woman who is or has been a Saddleback student or employee is pondering suicidal slaughter, somewhere in his memory is an experience, an image, a feeling that causes him to spare the Saddleback community. In some cases, mass shooters have warned specific individuals to stay away from campus. If they can spare individuals who they value, they can spare a campus if they value it. Here's a thought experiment. Imagine a student comes to your office. He sounds angry. Why did you give me a D on the midterm? How would you respond? Maybe you assume he's angry at you, and you've done nothing wrong, so his anger must be illegitimate. You tell him to calm down. Or maybe you're defensive because you hate to admit there's even a small chance that you got the grade wrong. Or maybe you politely explain the grade, ask about his study habits, suggest improvements, perhaps offer extra credit. A proper and sympathetic response. But what about the anger? A much greater concern, in my opinion, than a silly exam. Maybe you are empathetic. You understand his anger has deep roots. After all, most students don't become visibly angry over a low grade. You are empathetic, but you don't take action. People in pain usually want to be heard, want their pain acknowledged. So the optimal action in our thought experiment might be as simple as reflective listening. In reflective listening, you pay attention to feelings, observe without judgment, and reflect back what you observe so that the other person feels heard. Here's an example. For the angry student, you might be the first person in a long time who has expressed empathy, who is trying to understand. The student is not prepared for this, but you are. You keep reflecting back what you're hearing. By reflecting back without judgment, by expressing a desire to understand, by genuinely hearing him, you've invited him to say more and maybe discover something about himself. You can imagine the rest of the conversation for yourself, but would it surprise you if this empathetic connection caused the student to become more engaged with your class? The good news is that principles of reflective listening, also known as empathetic listening, are easily learned. You can find lots of material online. You can go even further with a technique called nonviolent communication. The bad news is that putting the principles into action can be challenging. Empathy is difficult when you have your own heavy emotional baggage, when it's all about you. You might discover you have some internal work to do. Maybe you can get flex credit. Maybe you will find even greater benefits. Self-compassion is one step toward a compassionate campus. Another step is incorporating empathy and compassion into your curriculum, not just teaching with compassion, but teaching about compassion. This is easily done in the social and behavioral sciences. After all, empathy and compassion are biological and evolutionary. Indeed, They are the very basis for human society. And if you accept that premise, then it follows that empathy and compassion are fundamental to the humanities. So teach compassion, make it overt. There are, of course, many more steps to creating a consciously compassionate campus community. I mean, it seems like everybody's doing it, from big universities to community colleges, because it improves student well-being and academic performance. Also, it increases employee satisfaction. That's some food for thought anyway. Here's one more morsel, which for some of you might seem undercooked and hard to swallow, but give it a try. It may be easy and reductive to blame social media for social decline, but exchanging online messages is a very different experience from standing next to someone. Looking in their eyes, hearing their tone of voice, noticing their body language, and underneath all that, connecting at a vibrational level, which scientists call interbrain neural synchronization. As Albert Einstein explained, everything is vibration. What appears to our eyes as a physical world of solid, separated things is actually an endless network of atoms and subatomic particles all vibrating at some frequency. Bodies have frequencies, thoughts have frequencies, feelings have frequencies. You, as a network of energy, are in vibrational relationship with everything else, constantly transmitting your thoughts and feelings through the universal electron field. Yeah, I don't fully comprehend it either, but that's what physics and the science of brainwaves tells us. Looking at this chart, you'll see that higher vibrational frequency is more comfortable, more harmonious than lower vibrational frequency. Have you ever walked into a space and immediately felt uncomfortable, like this? Alternatively, have you ever walked in and thought, this place has good energy? That's probably a high frequency. More good news. There are practices for raising your vibrational frequency, for moving from a state of fear, for example, to a state of acceptance, even joy. Here's my thesis. By cultivating compassion, campus community members can raise their own vibrational frequency and, together, can raise the vibrational frequency of the campus. People who come to campus will be influenced by this elevated vibrational frequency, even if they don't notice it. The high frequency vibes might even calm and redirect the unhappy student who is contemplating suicidal slaughter. And if a would-be mass shooter who has never been on campus shows up one day, if truly at random he targets the compassionate high-frequency campus, it may be the case that the energy of the place has the effect of reaching his heart and changing his mind. Is this just wishful thinking, or is it within the realm of possibility? In 2019, in Portland, Oregon, a high school student brought a shotgun to class intending to kill himself. The police were called, but the football coach got there first. He later explained, I felt compassion for him. The coach disarmed the student without trouble. We might say that the student, met with compassion, allowed himself to be disarmed. Then the coach embraced him. The student was charged with crimes, but he wasn't locked away. He was sentenced to mental health care, substance abuse treatment, and 3 years of probation. The coach had demonstrated that this life was worth saving, not discarding. That's the power of compassion. Okay, to summarize my thesis,